All right, turning now to John Locke's Some Thoughts Concerning Education. Locke's an English philosopher, mostly of the 17th century. He actually died in 1704, so he straddles the next century a little bit. But by the time we get to the 1690s, England has itself entered into a new era in its political history. It's an emerging European power, angling for becoming a first-rate European power. And it's an emerging free market capitalist society, as well as moving strongly and having moving strongly in a more democratic parliament in ascendancy over the monarchy political direction here. And so in part what John Locke is doing is applying his broader abstract philosophical theory to questions of education, but he's also arguing for a new approach to education, one that is more in fitting with the emerging kind of society that he sees England as going into. He's also writing from a fairly lofty perch socially. He's now recognized as one of the leading intellectuals of his day, and so in a position to apply his philosophical views to more practical concerns such as an educational system. Now, as I go through, what I want to do is, this is a moderately long work, is just excerpt a few of the more striking passages that, despite the slightly archaic language, Locke wrote this over 300 years ago, when interpreted, they have a very modern, and should have a very modern sound to our 21st century contemporary ears, right, so to speak. So I wanted to draw ones that are very illustrative of the key realist philosophical themes, but also ones that put him in sharp contrast to the idealists of his day, but then also the idealists of our day. So the very first line here of this excerpt is, "A sound mind in a sound body is a short but full description of a happy state in this world." All right, stopping right there. Already, right, Locke is sounding the attack against the idealists. Notice his emphasis on a sound mind in a sound body, as opposed to the dualist separation of the two. Locke is saying the mind is in the body, and we should think of it as in the body. And rather than the idealist disparagement of bodily concerns and physicalistic concerns, Locke is saying a sound mind in a sound body, that we're concerned, of course, with a sound mind, but we're also concerned with a sound body. And so we're emphasizing that integrationism that is very characteristically realist. Is a short but full description of a happy state in this world. We're interested in having a happy state in this world. Again, a very realist approach here, rather than not being concerned with happiness and not being concerned particularly with this world here. Going on to the next full sentence here, Locke writes, "Men's happiness or misery is most part of their own making." Skipping over several lines here, "I think I may say that of all the men we meet with, 9 parts of 10 are what they are, good or evil, useful or not, by their education." I want to put those 2 points together to illustrate that Locke is emphasizing here a tabula rasa assessment of the human condition, and also an autonomy element in the human condition, that we make various choices, and it's the choices that we make that are most influential in determining the kinds of individuals that we become. So the first line I read, men's happiness or misery is most part of their own making. Right, who we are, how we end up, what kinds of beings we are as adults, that's under our control. We can make and fashion ourselves as we will. The second clause that I read there involving education, 90%, right, 9 parts out of 10, Locke is saying, of who we end up being is a matter of education. Of course, education is partly a matter of what we decide to do ourselves, but also partly a matter of what our parents and our teachers decide to present to us. But again, what we don't have is any indication here of nativism, or nativism being a dominant point here. It's mostly bare set of capacities that we are born, and we make choices, and under the education that we receive, that is going to determine the kinds of beings that we end up being. He does that leave rather that 1 part out of 10 left. That could, of course, be some natural endowments that vary among individual. It could be luck elements outside of our control, right, or whatever. Locke then goes on to consider the issue of how, if we're concerned with developing a sound mind and a sound body, how we take a newborn infant and raise it until it has that particular status. And he says the first thing that we have to attend to are matters of health, particularly the physical health of our child. Children, when they're first born, of course, they're developing psychologically as well as physically, but it's primarily physical health issues that in the first year or so that have to dominate here. The child needs to be kept warm, the child needs to be fed, the child needs rest, and so forth. And so the child needs to be cleaned on a fairly regular. So developing the child physically is a strong foundation. The rationale that John Locke gives for this in the next paragraph here that I'll read, quote, "How necessary health is to our business and happiness, and how requisite a strong constitution able to endure hardships and fatigue is to one that will make any figure in the world is too obvious to need any proof." Now, he makes the point that this is very obvious, and that might be true, but he does feel it necessary to say that paying attention to physical health, having health education, and making that a priority for parents and teachers may not have been as obvious in the more idealist-dominated education of his day. Physical health is the foundation then for an entirely healthy life, including a mentally healthy life, and so on.